Hoops through life. Hoops through life.
Welcome to another episode of Hoops Through Life, a podcast where we discuss everything related to women's basketball player development, the collegiate recruiting process, and transition from high school to college. I'm your host, Elsbeth Bierman. Our guest today is Coach Luke Sheidecker. Luke brings a wealth of experience, having served as assistant director or director of basketball operations at Southeast Missouri State University on the men's side and at Southern Illinois University, where he transitioned to the women's side. He's also been an assistant coach at Indiana State University and head coach at Shawnee Community College, where he led one of the biggest turnaround seasons in NJCAA women's basketball history, going from 0-27 to an incredible 30-3, winning both the Great Rivers Athletic Conference and Region 24 titles. Currently, Luke is the head coach at Wabash Valley College, where he's coached over 50 players who have gone on to play at the 4-year level, with more than 35 advancing to NCAA Division I programs. Earlier this year, he was named the WBCA Coach of the Year for 2-year colleges. Luke, thank you so much for being here.
I appreciate you having me. Very excited to do this.
Awesome. So let's just jump into it. Where does your recruiting process begin?
Yeah, so my recruiting process begins, we usually wait around till like this time of year, October, November, December, kind of see who's still available, who have the Division I side, Division IIs, everything along those lines, and then really target the areas that we look at, right? So I'm really here personally. I truly believe in staying within 6 hours of our school here in Mount Carmel, Illinois. So, that gives us quite a few big cities to do. So we try to stay within 6 hours. And then it really starts picking up in, December, January, February. And the busiest time of the year is probably March, April, May. So we're usually a little bit later than most like Division I, Division IIs to signing kids, but we're also signing, most years I'm signing 10, 11 players a year compared to 3 or 4 or 5. So, it's a big, long process most years.
So when you say it starts kind of around this time, do you mean, so those generally like seniors, 12th graders, or what ages are you all usually looking at?
For me personally, I'm just looking at seniors right now. And just to be very honest, like we're looking for players here at Wabash Valley who want to play Division I basketball. That's their goals. That's their aspirations. So that's who we target. The reality from that I look at it this way is Wabash is not their dream school, right? This is an opportunity to get them to their dream here at Wabash. So this is a step that, hey, you don't get what you like recruiting wise. Maybe it's an injury, maybe it's issues with grades, maybe just under recruited because your AAU team wasn't what you thought it was going to be. That's where we come in and we help with that process to bridge the gap between going from high school to that next level.
So you just mentioned a little piece of it, but can you maybe go a little bit deeper into who is a community college appropriate for?
Yeah, so I mean, there's 3 different levels to junior college basketball. There's Division I, which with Division I, the differences between Division I, Division II, Division III is the scholarship level. Division I would be more along the lines of like to pay for basically everything: tuition, books, housing, meal plans, different things like that. Where Division II cannot pay for like housing and meal plans, and Division III doesn't have aid. So that's kind of where it starts, right? Junior colleges, looking at the 3 different levels of junior college. Junior college is a great opportunity for anyone who wants to, continue to play basketball, right? With so many different opportunities out there, there's a fit for everyone, right? Maybe you're just using basketball to get your education paid for, right? Or, maybe it's, like I said, maybe it's you got hurt your senior year and you missed a lot of basketball. So then you go to junior college route. Maybe it's school didn't go as well, right? Maybe it's you didn't get recruited where you wanted to, right? Or maybe it's just that's the level of basketball you're going to play at, the junior college level. There's a fit for everybody, and that's what one of my struggles with women's basketball right now is there's a lot of scholarships that are going unused all across the country that schools are begging for people to use, and people don't need to get disappointed, right? Or people think right now they see their friends, different players they played AAU with, committing. There's scholarship money literally available for the 2025 class up until next August. Like full ride opportunities. I see it every year where great colleges are getting full ride money a year from now, even. I mean, for the 2025 class. So if your recruiting is not going the way you want it to right now, don't get frustrated because there's a lot of great opportunities out there, that we're just, you just got to be patient for, right? That's where a lot of people struggle is they're not patient in the process. You just gotta relax, be patient, and wait for the right opportunity.
Yeah, so I may have misspoke. I said community college and you're saying junior college. Are those terms interchangeable or is it just kind of my ignorance and I'm not sure what to call which?
No, no, I mean they're completely interchangeable, right? So like NJC is the National Junior College. Most schools go by community college. It's just kind of where you're at. I would say regionally,
Okay.
what it's called.
Okay. Yeah. Cause I grew up in the Maryland area. So MC is like the biggest community college, junior college around. And it has a really good reputation, honestly, from, what I know about it in growing up. And I believe that's what they called it. So that's why I said that. But I just wanted to double check with you.
No, you're 100% correct. It's all about where you're at location wise.
All right, cool. So do you find that those unused scholarships, like you said, do you think there's a stigma with kids going to junior college, or where do you think that stems from, those unused scholarships?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a stigma, right? I think people look at junior college as, oh, I don't want to go to that. I want to go someplace where I'm going to be for all 4 years. And I understand that, right? But my pushback would be is, my players here, we've had incredible success moving players on. Um, my players have loved their time at Wabash, most of the time more than they do at their next school. Um, it's a small, tight-knit community, right? That's what you're going to get with a junior college in most situations. A very hands-on approach where people are invested in you. Um, you know, every teacher knows your name, right? They if you need to go talk to them in person, they you're able to do that, right? It's not a situation where you're one of 100 in the class, right? You're not a number, you're a person. People are invested, the community's invested in it. So I think a lot of it is people get stuck on the idea of, oh, I'm better than junior college, right? Or like in our case here, we've beat Division Ones consistently in scrimmages throughout years. Or maybe it's I just want to go to a place where I can be all 4 years, so I can build those relationships. But to this day, some of my players have great relationships with their teammates that have gone on 8, 9, 10 years at this point, right? So I think you get that at junior college just as well as you can at whatever other 4 year school you want to go to.
Yeah. What other differences would you say? Because you have coached, and we were talking a little bit before about how you've coached at a lot of different levels. So how would you say that maybe the junior college recruiting process differs from a 4-year college recruiting process?
Yeah, and I think it depends on levels, right? Even with a 4 year college, Division ones are recruiting earlier, right? But now that also is transitioning with the portal changing things. So I think it differs for each level, right? Even there. So it's one of those situations where the 4 years right now are being a little bit more picky about who they take, just because the tradition thing is schools are trying to stay older. So that's where a junior college opportunity can be really good for someone because they can come in, get experience, play. Right, a lot of people don't think most high school players are used to playing a lot of minutes. Right, going into college, that transition's huge. People struggle with it when they don't go and play, and then they lose their love of basketball. I see it all the time where people, may go to Division One, may go to Division Two. It doesn't go the way they expect it, because they go there and they don't play, and they're used to being the best player on their high school team, and then it's a big transition. They lose their love for the game, or they get, they're mentally going through it because it's a huge transition. And that's where junior college offers a great opportunity. Every year we have freshmen are a huge piece of every junior college program in the country. So that's where it's a great opportunity for people to come in and play, get experience, and do it at a high level.
Yeah, it just goes back to fit, like you said, and appropriateness. Like it's a great, I don't think anybody should, take the junior college option off the table just because, especially if they've never explored it or talked to any coaches, because it really is a great opportunity. And do you think that with the way things are with the portal, that it gives your athletes kind of an edge because schools are looking for somebody, like you said, a little bit older with a little bit more experience. Plus, from specifically your program, you all have done really well in the past. They might be looking at you. Do you think that gives your athletes an edge right now? And like, has that changed? Have you found?
Yeah, I mean, I 100% think it gives our athletes an edge here. People want people from great cultures, environments. They want people who know how to win. They want people who know how to compete every day, so that when they do make that transition, they can jump in right away and play at a high level. And that's what our student athletes have done here. I mean, I could go on a list of our players moving on and stepping in right away and doing significant things. One of our players led the conference in assists last year at their school in their first year. Another one averaged 12 points, like 11, 12 points a game in the A10, which is an incredible league. Like they want players who are going to be ready for that moment, right? But I think you hit on a great point. To me, the most important thing in recruiting is to find the right fit, right? And that's something we talk to our players about here nonstop. The right fit is everything. The level isn't as important as the right fit, right? Now, I understand chasing dreams, different things like that, but I've had players go to a Division 1 that's maybe struggling a little bit and not be happy compared to, a player go to Division 2 that's really good, have great success. Finding the right fit with the right school, really what's important is finding the right coaches and the right program for you, because that's going to a lot of times dictate your college career, how happy you are, how much you enjoy it. Because if you go somewhere and the coaching staff isn't a right fit for you, it can be a miserable couple of years. So finding that right fit is everything, and doing your background and not getting enamored with, the facilities or just being recruited or different things like that. Finding the right fit and taking your time to find the right fit is everything.
Yeah, so specifically at the junior college level, what questions, if an athlete is thinking about maybe they like one of those reasons that you said, they're not getting the looks that they want to get, now they're looking at junior colleges. What types of questions should they be asking the coaches, knowing that their goal is to go to maybe a Division 1 or a Division 2 school after?
The biggest thing when asking that, right, is, hey, how are you going to do this, right? And then give me examples of how it's been done. And then on top of that, I would I always recommend to my players when they go on visits, and we try to do a really good job of it here, is have our players have our recruits spend time with our players here without us around, right? Because I can tell you anything, right? I can sit here and say, hey, this, that, the other. And I see it all the time in recruiting, right? But the players are going to tell you the truth majority of the time, right? Like, hey, we love it here. Hey, it is what this is. This is great. This is not what's great. This is what the coaches are like. This is what blah 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 blah. Right? Finding that right situation. And like asking those questions of like, okay, how do you guys lift weights? Do you guys do study hall? What do you guys do as far as individuals? What kind of schedule do you guys play? Do you guys go to the national tournament? Can I see a list of players you've had move on? You won that a lot. I still shocks me is finding a program where the coaches are going to work for you in recruiting to get you to that next spot, and not just, oh, you're on your own now. Because there are programs out there that do that, right? You want to go to a program and play for a school and a coach that's going to work to get you to that next level. It's easier for us here. I'll be the first to admit that, right? We have schools. I mean, I get 5 to 10 phone calls a day from coaches asking about players. But there's some schools that don't get that, right? So, going to a school where the coach is going to work for you is incredibly important. Where do they have connections at, right? If you want to stay in centrally close to home, do you have connections with the coaches in the area here? Those are important questions to ask. And then I think on top of that is, to be informed about your scholarship, right? I see it all the time on Twitter where, oh, I've got a full ride at a D2 junior college. Well, you might not be paying anything, right? But what does financial aid look like, right? How much money you're going to get back for financial aid if you get financial aid? Are you going to have to take out loans? I think being informed of your financial aid package is a huge thing too, right? getting it on paper and seeing it like, hey, this is exactly what it is. This is how much money my family will be out. This is how much money, I'll be getting back if I get financial aid, if I get different things like that. Can I work while I'm out there? Can I do work study? These are questions to ask, coaches as you go on visits to be informed, to be educated, so that when you get there, you're not surprised. Right? That's what I always tell our recruits here is like, I don't want you to step foot here and be surprised about what's going on, right? You should know from day one exactly what's going on and be informed of that.
Yeah, it just goes back to, I think, a little bit of doing your research, but also asking questions. And I will double down on the hang out with the players without the coaches, because in my experience, they do tell the truth. And
Yep.
because I've talked to athletes and they've said, yeah, I went on a visit to that school and they told me not to come there. And I thought, oh
Yep.
wow, yeah, that's
Yes.
that's
But
telling.
it's good. It's good to know that now than before you get there and then be like, oh, you're not going to like it here.
Hmm.
Um, and that's important, right? Because if you go to school, if you leave home to go play basketball at a college, and it's not what you thought it was going to be, right? Maybe the relationship with the coaches isn't strong. Maybe the environment's not good. It's going to affect everything, right? You physically, mentally, your grades. It can be a huge factor. So you have to find the right situation where you can be successful.
Yeah. What would your response be for an athlete who is thinking about a community college, but their reason that they might want to look at a 4 year is because the recruiting process has already been stressful and they just kind of want to know and they don't want to be stressed out potentially for the next 2 years.
Yeah. I think we as society have made the recruiting process stressful, right? I think we put so much pressure on, oh, you have to go play Division 1. You have to go play Division 2. Even, like and I a lot of times I don't think it comes from the player itself. It comes from the parents, right? I've coached AU as well, and the parents are more concerned about it most of the time than the players are themselves, right? I always tell everyone, just sit back and enjoy it, right? And I know that's easier said than done, but the reality is you're going to end up at the right level most of the time. That's just reality how this works. This is our full time job as coaches, and you're going to end up at the right level. If you can play, you're going to end up at the correct level. That's just how this works. So, my to say that right is junior college isn't about coming here and being stressed about the process. I always tell my players, let the process take care of itself. I've had people struggle. I've had a few players throughout the year struggle because they put too much pressure on the recruiting process. And I tell them, look, you have to just trust us, right? We this is what we do. Just come here, have fun, worry about your school, worry about basketball, worry about just getting better in all aspects, and the rest will take care of itself. I think at the end of the day, if you're constantly putting pressure on yourself with it, your results are gonna be hurt. I'm also the athletic director here at Wabash, and we have one of the best baseball programs in the country as well. I think last year we had like 15 guys signed Division 1. Other years before that, we've had over 20. And we talk about it as with our athletic staff here all the time is make sure that we're doing everything we can to do to prepare them and help them, right? But also understand like they're young, they're learning about this, but let them know that like, hey, we're here to help you through the recruiting process. So I think it's one of those avenues where just talking to someone about, hey, just be just we put so much pressure on, hey, you got to do this in recruiting, right? Where that's not needed. We really don't talk about recruiting a whole lot here, honestly. We talk about doing your job, right? Like that's the biggest thing. And if you do your job, the rest is going to take care of itself, whether that be Division 1, Division 2, Division 3, NAIA. If you do what you're supposed to, it will take care of itself.
Yeah, that just reminds me of, sometimes you'll hear coaches say that winning is a byproduct of doing, the right things every day and doing what we need you to do in practice. And that just reminds me of that of you will you being recruited to play, continue to play is a byproduct of, like you said, getting your grades up if they're down or maintaining your grades, working hard, getting better on and off the court. So yeah, I love that because I think it's it's simple, but it's not easy because it's hard to trust and it's like we want to, have a checklist or do something or know exactly what we're supposed to be doing. And it's hard to just kind of allow the process to take care of itself, I think.
Yeah, 100%. We talk when I recruit players and when they get here for the first month, I ask them consistently, what is our number one job here? Right. And they'll look at me and they'll say winning, or they'll say to get us to the next level. I say, none of those are right. Our number one job here is to prepare you. If we prepare you, we will win. You'll get recruited. You'll get better. You'll graduate, and you'll become a better person when you leave here as well. If we do those things, it will take care of itself. We talk about that constantly, right? Yes, we all want to win, right? Now, we have a talented group. So, when we do those things, we tend to win more. But, it's one of those situations where just continue to get better every day, right? Do the right thing. Focus on the process. Don't look at the end results, right? People talk about, oh, our goal is to win the national championship. Our goal is to win the conference. Our goal is to win the region, right? You can have a great year and still not do that, right? And maybe your goal is, hey, I want to go to Division 1, right? But at the end of the day, if you go to a good Division 2 that treats you right, that you win championships, you can have a lot more fun. I had a player last year where she left. She was with me 2 years ago, and last year was her first year away from us, and she had quite a few Division 1 opportunities from low major Division 1s, and she had a couple of really good Division 2s recruiting her. She went on visits, decided on Division 2. She went to Division 2. They made the Final Four. She starts for them, right? She loves it there. She sent me pictures a couple of days ago of her in the gym shooting it's her senior year, right? She could have gone to Division 1 and won 7 games. Well, last year they won 30, right? Like, you have to find what's right for you. I understand we all have goals, right? But sometimes our goals change, right? Focus on what's going to make you happy and put you in a place to be successful.
Yeah, it's all about your experience, right? And
Yes.
that she's sounds like she's having an amazing experience, and that's what it's about, because the reality is, in my opinion, and you can give me your thoughts on this, no matter what level you're playing at, no matter, what you're doing, when you're in season, that's the most important. That might as well be, the highest of the levels, because that's what's most important to you and the team. And you're worried about what's happening in your conference or regionally or, whatever. And it's, yeah, I just can't express enough. It's about the experience, and nobody cares.
Exactly. You are 100% correct. Like, it is about the experience, right? And that's our goal here, is to make sure we pair our student athletes up with people who are going to give them a great experiences when they leave here. Because we feel very confident that we give people great experiences here, and they leave here and they love it, right? They talk about some of the best years of their basketball life was here at Wabash, and not just because of the basketball program, but the school as well. But finding that right experience is everything, right? Because those are memories you're going to have for a lifetime, whether they're good or bad, right? Like,
Yeah.
and talking to one of my players yesterday was talking about telling me a story. Like, I'll never forget that, Coach Luke. I'm like, me and you both, right? Like, like, it's fun, right? It's one of those situations where you're gonna have ups and downs, but that's part of the growth, right? Like, can you remember how much we had to run? Like, blah 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 blah, right? Finding the right spot is everything.
Yeah. Yeah. I 100% agree with that. So, or let's shifting gears a little bit, and maybe you touch on a few of these, but I don't know if there's anything else you would want to add. What are some common misconceptions about junior college?
Yeah, a lot of times people think junior college is because you don't have good grades, right? That's very rarely the case anymore. The NCAA has shifted with eligibility standards, right? In the past, was people struggle taking tests, right? Well, the NCAA has shifted away from test taking. So I think a lot of times bad grades, right? It's not a high level. I think people think junior college isn't a high level. Come watch one of our practices. Come watch one of our games, right? Like, you know, we have some incredible basketball players, some incredible young student athletes. It's one of those things, right? Like, people think like, oh, well, even we talk about, go back to levels again. Go watch good Division 3 basketball. That's a high level, right? Like, that's what you need to understand in the process. Everyone is like, don't get caught up in the misconceptions about like, oh, I'm going to this level. Now, you could go to the wrong school and it may not be a high level, right? But be informed. But I think, like I said, it comes back to bad grades, not a high level, and then also just like you're going to be in a small community, right? Some cases like ours it is, but there's other community colleges that are in big cities. So it's kind of finding what's right for you.
Yeah, and just back to level again and how there's really talented players at all levels. Less less than 5% of high school athletes, I'm talking about women's basketball here, make it to any next level. So it's
Yep.
like when you take that's less than 5%. So if you're getting recruited at or if you're playing at any college level, you're already in the top 95% of all the other athletes. So I think that's one thing to be celebrated. And also I would I would also agree with watching other games, like watch the NCAA tournament at all levels because there's really good basketball at the Division 1, 2, and 3 levels. I'm just thinking about I watched a lot of the Division 3 NCAA tournament and I mean NYU, they were the national champions last year.
Yep.
They're really good. It's like they could beat some Division 2, even Division 1 teams. And it's like
Yep.
there's good basketball everywhere. And so I agree. I think sometimes athletes get caught up on the names and the labels, I think.
Yes. And the glitz and glamour of like, oh, I get all this, right? And like the reality is if you're not happy, that's not going to matter.
Yeah,
Like
that's
that's
true.
just that's not going to matter.
Yeah, so what would you say your role is in advocating for your athletes versus what their role is? And maybe I think you've touched on pieces of this in different answers, but if you wanted to add anything to how you view your role in the recruiting process for your athletes and your in their role.
Yeah. So I mean, I'll kind of walk you through how the recruiting process works for student athletes, right? It depends, right? If you're a freshman or sophomore, right? And if you're a qualifier or non-qualifier. So the majority of our freshmen recently have been qualifiers. So we have that conversation with their family even before they start, right? Hey, do you want to come here for 1 year, 2 years, right? If you want to come here for 1 year, we'll help you in the process and let you leave after 1 year. We're always going to do what's best for them. So, it starts there, right? Freshman or sophomore. Sophomores, right? We tend to have more sophomores consistently. So we'll start like right now. We start playing. We don't want to talk to consistently about them recruiting, right? We don't need them worrying about that. We're fortunate to have enough connections where we kind of know what level of play should be going to, and usually a good opportunity. So we'll go throughout the year. In very few cases, we've had someone sign early. Sign in the November signing period. Most of the time they sign late in the late signing period. So, we'll start playing games. We'll have schools contact and they'll call me or call my assistant or email or whatever the case may be. And then, then we'll kind of tell them who's on our roster. Sometimes they're familiar with it, and kind of talk about, hey, this is who this is. This is who this is. And then like for us, a lot of it's doing our background and research as far as making sure it's a good fit, right? Because sometimes even like assistant coaches move a lot in college basketball. So sometimes assistant coaches don't always know what their head coach can coach. That's another thing I think people don't talk about in recruiting enough is making sure you fit with the head coach, and the head coach can coach you. Because I've seen instances where a lot that the head coach isn't able to coach a player, or another head coach can coach a player. Kim Caldwell, who's now the head coach of Tennessee, she recruited our players here consistently when she was at Glenville State. Me and her would always have that conversation about like being able to coach the right, like knowing what you can coach. And like she knew she could coach the kids that came from us, right? Like, and she had great success when they won championships there. So finding that right fit, right? Like, and, you know, understanding like, hey, this coach can coach me. That's really important. So we help our student athletes with that process. And then once, January, like this is also a thing, understand when coaches are in season, they tend to recruit less. They're busy. They got a lot going on. They're worried about the next scout, worried about the next game. So I always say January recruiting will pick up a little bit. February will pick up more, and then March will be even crazier, and then April is hopefully you're making a decision and it's done. But we help them through the process, right? If they're not, we sit down with our players and we basically have our players rank what's most important to them, right? Like we have a scale that basically we have I'll have all the players list what what's important in their recruiting process, and they'll do this in front of their teammates, so then they can see it. Like someone may say location, some may say, well, I want to go to an HBCU. Some may say, I want this, I want that, right? Like I want a high academic school, or I want to play at the mid-major level, or whatever the case may be. So we'll have 20 things on the whiteboard, and then our players will basically list what is most important for them, right? So then that way we know, okay, so you're saying you want to be someplace that's going to win, that's close to home, someplace that has a good tradition, history, and fits the culture that you want, right? And so then when schools start calling us, does this fit what you want, right? And we'll go through that process and see if it's a good fit for them. And sometimes we have to adjust what they want because they're not getting as much as they would like, but it's different for every player. But I really think so. We go through that process, and then if they're not getting what they want, we'll send out emails. I'll call, and we'll kind of go through that process. But we're working for them as well in that recruiting process of making sure they get to the right opportunity. Because the last thing I want is a phone call saying, "Coach, I don't like you here. I need help transferring." Like, those are, and we do it all the time, right? That's the world we live in. Where people are transferring, but the reality is we'd rather have you go someplace and finish your career at one place if you have the opportunity to.
Do you find that most junior college coaches take their athletes through that process as well?
I would say the majority do. I don't know if everyone goes as in depth as we do, just because we've had so much experience doing it. I'd say there's a handful, like a few junior colleges in the country that have the numbers that we have that have moved on to that next level. But here's the reality too. I know that they don't, because I'll have players from other schools contact me asking for help with their recruiting. And that's where I try to help as many people as I can in the recruiting process, because ultimately we only have an X amount of players, and I get all these phone calls and, hey, well, I don't have a player that fits this, but I know someone else who does. Right. And I try to help with that process as well. Because at the end of the day, I just want to see people move on and, chase their dreams.
When you talked about finding a coach that can coach you, a head coach that can coach you, how can an athlete tell if a head coach is able to coach them?
I really think watching games is probably the biggest thing, right? Watching games and then having conversations with the players with the coaches not around. Like, hey, you have to know who you are too, right? Which is also a complicated thing on top of it. But hey, I know I'm really hard on myself, right? How do they handle someone being really hard on themselves, right? Hey, this is the big one. A lot of people don't think about this. Like, I really have trouble remembering plays. Well, if you really have trouble remembering plays, you can't go to a school that's going to have 100 plays. Right? That's not going to work out well. When I was at the Division I level, we had a girl who came from Wabash to me at Indiana State, and she struggled remembering plays. Right? And we had a bunch of plays. Her minutes, she couldn't play because she couldn't remember plays. Right? Like, those are the things people don't think about, right? But the reality too is also, right, like sometimes you have to adjust. If you have a ton of opportunities and there's not the school that fits exactly what you need, you may have to figure it out yourself. But sometimes people have bad attitudes, right? They don't handle losing well or different things like that. So you've got to understand how the head coach is going to react when you don't handle it well, right? Maybe school's not easy for you, right? Like, you try your best, but school's just not naturally easy. Like, how do they help you with that, right? Are they invested in you, or they're going to check in every day, do study hall with you, or are they just going to, hey, everyone here is good on their grades. You got to figure it out yourself, right? Finding those little things is really important.
How do you help your players with that self-awareness piece?
Oh, we talk about it all the time. That's one of the things. we have a very real culture here, right? Like we keep 100. Like we're not going to sit here and lie about it, right? Like, hey, this is where you're at, right? Like we need to get better at this, and this, right? You're doing this great, but hey, maybe it's when things aren't going your way, you're not handling it great, right? Maybe it's your body language gets poor when things aren't going right. You know, having those conversations, right? You know, is key, right? People rather have the truth than be surprised and not play, right? Like, you know, I always believe in being very upfront and honest. Like yesterday, we did a thing with our players. We do this every year, and we have our first jamboree here in a couple of days. So we basically give our players a sheet of paper with everyone's name on it and say how many minutes should each player play, right? So we're going to write all these numbers down, this and that. So yesterday we get our sheets back. We've got players with like 400 minutes total in the game, right? I come to the players back. I say, okay, hold up. Some of you got like 385 minutes for this game. I said, there's only 200 minutes in this game. So now you're going to do it again, and we have to win this game. Who do you want on the floor, right? And then they write it down. Then we put those numbers in an Excel sheet. We see what their teammates' averages of it, and then we tell them, right? Like, hey, your teammates see you playing 30 minutes a game. Hey, right now your teammates see you playing 2 minutes a game. Why is that, right? And we have conversations so that way, that first game of the year, they understand it. So I think like, we try to be very upfront and honest with them about like, and if someone's not being upfront and honest with you, right, go ask somebody else. You should have somebody in your circle who's going to tell you the truth, right? Like that's the biggest thing I can't stress people enough is getting the right people in your circle who are going to work for you in the recruiting process. Because I think that's everything, right? That's a big piece of the puzzle there. So, just understanding what your weaknesses is, I think starts with having those conversations.
Yeah, I can't stress enough either what you said about having people who are going to tell you the truth because I totally agree. I think people would rather know the truth, especially from somebody who's trusted and they know that cares about them. And then instead of, showing up somewhere and just being surprised and never playing, and you thought it was going to be something different. And now you're calling Coach Luke and saying, help me transfer because this is not what I thought it was going to be.
Yep, 100%.
Yeah. So you did mention a little bit about the transition before. So let's go into that a little bit. So the transition from high school to any type of institution after that can be a really big one that's stressful on parents and athletes. So what are some proactive strategies you think would help in that first year academically and athletically?
Yeah, so I think we start academically, right? I think the biggest thing that I try to talk to all of our student athletes here about is to have a routine, right? That's, hey, I'm going to wake up at a certain time every day, right? I know my schedule, right? I know when I'm going to do my homework. I know when I'm going to be at study hall and stick to that routine, right? Like obviously, if you get your stuff done beforehand, you can adjust to that. But I think having a routine is really, really important, right? And that routine includes like eating, sleeping, right? Like, and I know that sounds crazy, but like, I teach a couple classes as well. And we're talking about sleep right now in the classes, right? Students getting 4 or 5 hours of sleep a night. Like, if you're a student athlete, that's not setting you up for success, right? Like, hey, you're gonna go to bed at 11 o'clock every night. You're gonna wake up at 7:30. You're gonna eat breakfast, right? Then you're going to take some time to yourself. Then you're gonna go to class. In between your classes, I'm gonna go see the trainer, right? Like every detail matters. People who do stuff at a high level are on a routine. I've read quite a few books about that where like, routines are going to identify what's important to you, right? Like, do you spend time, hey, I'm going to get in the gym 30 minutes extra, right? You have to find time to do that in college. So, finding a routine is really, really important. That'd be my biggest tip for anything with even athletically, academically, you know, find a routine, right? Like, don't, and also like I'm a big believer in, and don't go lay in the bed. Like in between classes, don't go sleep. Don't, this and that. Like nothing's wrong with a 20-minute power nap, but make sure you're taking care of your business early, getting it done with your grades, and meeting with your teachers and different things like that. So so like find a routine, super important. Next one, I cannot stress enough. College is overwhelming when you go there, right? It will take you about a month, but find the right people to hang around. That is, I mean, if you don't find the right people to hang around, it can be a disaster for you. Figure out like who's invested in themselves, right? They do their schoolwork, right? They do what they're supposed to do. They get in the gym, you know, they're handling their business, right? You want to be around people who handle their business because that's going to push you to do that as well, right? If I'm saying, hey, let's go get in the gym, and 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 they're saying, nah, I don't want to do that, right? Well, that's going to make you think that it's okay, right? Well, if all three of you are sitting there and like, hey, let's go to the gym, and everyone's like, yeah, let's go, right? That's gonna give you the idea of like, okay, I'm doing this right. So finding the right people is everything. I mean, because if you're finding someone who's negative, who's blaming other people for their failures, you're going to believe that as well, right? So finding people who are going to be honest with you, right, and people who care about you and are invested in you is everything. So even with your friend group.
Yeah, so one thing about the routine, so a coach that I know, he used to have his players do this, and they would do a time audit because they'd say, Coach, I want to get better, but I don't have any time in the day to practice my sport. And okay, we're all going to do this time audit for a week or a couple days, and they would just write down the time and what they did during that time for the whole day. And they
Yep.
would they would show him the sheet. Oh, interesting. I see you're watching TikTok for 3 hours. I think you can take an hour of that and put it
Yes.
towards your sport, right? You have a little bit
Yes.
more time than I think you thought that you had. And I think it's eye-opening for athletes too, because they might not realize how much time they're spending in the calf just sitting there talking to their friends when they could be doing their work or getting better or just something. And
Yeah.
then, sorry, were you going to say something?
Oh no, no, but you're 100% correct about that.
Yeah. And then, so the second one about finding your people, I was listening to a podcast a couple weeks ago, and he just said it in a way where I thought, okay, wow, that's like a very powerful statement. He said, I feel like if you have good friends, if you surround yourself with the right people, you really can't get in that much trouble, right? Like
Oh,
you
100%.
can't because if you're like, oh man, let's I don't know, steal these basketballs from the gym. If I were to say that, my friends would be like, "What are you doing? Stop!" Like that's no, that's the worst idea that you've ever had. Let's just leave and go to the library or something, right? But if you're around the wrong people, yeah, let's do that. Let's take all. And so it's like it's just this snowball effect. But yeah, I really believe if you're around the right people, you really can't get in that much trouble. But when you're not around the right people, it can like really quickly kind of go downhill.
Yeah. Well, I have a story that I love to share with people. Shauna Wagner, she plays at Troy University now. She's really good for Troy last year, and she have a huge role for him this year. One of my favorite stories ever. I mean, I just talked to her yesterday, and she was an All-American for us for 2 years. And we talked about growth her first year, right? And like, hey, make sure you're around the right people, like handle your business. I mean, and we saw steps. Her second year, she came in and she was locked in. She had a set time. I'm gonna be in the gym every day at this time. I'm gonna work out. I'm gonna be here all nonstop. Like her grades. I mean, she had a 4.0. I mean, like, and like she would tell you like that's not who she was before, right? And the time I really knew it clicked, right, is I had a really good relationship with her and we talked about stuff all the time. She comes up to me, she's like, I cut her off. I'm like, what you mean? And she's like, I told her if she doesn't fix it, we're done. Like we can still be friends, but we're not hanging out like that. It's like I'm tired of me trying to get her to come to the gym and do stuff. I'm tired of me trying to tell her to do her homework and her not doing it. It's like she's hurting herself, she's hurting the team, and she's hurting our friendship. And says she got to figure this out, or I can't hang around her. She said, and I was like, oh my gosh, it was a moment, one of those situations where it's like you don't want to do that to somebody, right? But you can only try so much and realize, okay, it's hurting me now, and a situation where like you could consistently have conversations, but she got around the right people, right? She found her environment, and she was and had incredible success doing it and grew. But like understanding, like sometimes you have to cut people off of your circle if they're not going to handle their business as well, because it's going to hurt everybody.
Yeah, and props to her because that's really hard. That's really
Very
hard to
hard,
do.
very
Yeah.
hard. Yeah, and because she was like super close to the player the year before, and situation where it's like it's growth, right? Like that's hard to do, but she understood like it was hurting her and everyone else. So
Awesome. That's really cool. And those are the moments where you're like, oh wow, she was listening to the things that I was saying.
yes, 100%.
Yeah. All right, so I have the last couple questions that I ask all guests. So, what book or podcast would you recommend every incoming first year read before their season begins, and why?
I don't know if I would say I specifically have a book or podcast, right? Like I listen to like basketball coaching podcasts, like I read like leadership books, different things like that. So that may be hard for me to say, right? But if I had like a tip for someone, right, would
Hmm.
be prepared going in, right? Like figure out your routine before you get to college, right? Come in shape. Like come in, you've worked hard over the summer, and the coaches know you've worked hard over the summer, right? And then the biggest thing is bring energy to everything you do, right? Like tr- go talk to the coaches, right? This is what I tell people, our players all the time, right? This is a two-way street, right? We have to work to build a relationship with you, but you need to work to build a relationship with us also, right? Like, stop by, have conversations with your teachers, get to know them, understand like there are people too. Ask about their kids, ask about what they like to do in their free time, right? If people know that you're invested in them, they will move mountains to help you. If you're not invested, they don't care. Like if you go to class and you don't try, you sit in the back, never talk in class, they're not going to care. They'll have no problem giving you a seat, right? But if you walk in and hey, so and so, I'm really struggling with this paper. Can you help me out? They're going to help you out most of the time, or they're going to point you in the right direction to get help. So be intentional from the get go, right? Like intentional in everything you do, whether that be in the summer working out. So when you get there, go meet people, you know, introduce yourself, be invested, get involved in stuff around campus, not just with your basketball program, and I think if you do those things, you're going to have success, right? Like hard work doesn't go unnoticed, whether that's basketball in the school, anywhere. People notice when you're trying to do the right thing. People try to notice when people are good kids and they're invested in stuff. So be intentional, like all the time,
Yeah, I
and
hope.
be consistent.
Yeah, I mean, I think all of that was great, and I hope if you're listening, you jotted a couple of those down because I think that is super important and can serve you in high school, college, and beyond. So, yeah, love that. All right, if you could snap your fingers and change one thing about the recruiting process, what would it be and why?
The misnomer that you have to go to a certain level, and that the pressure that people put on people to go to those levels. I just think it's unfair. You are who you are sometimes, and like people, oh, you have to go do this, you have to go do that. You don't have to do that. Find the right experience for you. Go have fun, right? You're in college one time. College should be the best time of your life. I tell my players that all the time. I mean, college students still tend to think they're stressed, right? But stress is when I'd say if you don't pay your bills, like the lights get shut off, and if the water gets shut off, right? Like you have kids, like you have to feed them, right? Like those are different levels of stress that they're not used to yet, right? So college should be the most fun time you have in your life, right? Like find a place that's going to give you that, whether it's Division 3, Division 2, Division 1, NAIA, junior college. I mean, it doesn't matter, right? Like find the right place because at the end of the day, you being happy and doing what you love to do, it's going to go a long ways, and you having great memories and different things like that. So find the right place.
And so this could have been your quick tip. So if you have nothing else, that's okay too. But any final things that you want to say?
Nope. I appreciate you having me on. Enjoy the recruiting process. Don't get stressed about it. Sit back, ask questions, like you said earlier. ask questions. Don't just assume. I know this sounds crazy, but don't just assume everything people say is always 100% true, right? Like fact check it, you know, and like I just can't stress enough. When you go on recruiting visits, try to get times with the players alone, right? Like, you know, whether that be a 15-minute circle or you just talk to the players or, you know, your parents talk to the coaches, you go to the side and go talk to the players on their own. You know, reach out to them on Instagram, right? You can find anyone on Instagram or Twitter or whatever, right? Like, I mean, do your homework, right? Because it's your future and it's you know, will be a big next couple of years or 2 to 4 years for you.
So if anybody wants to keep up with you or Wabash, where can they find you?
Yeah, they can email me. My email is Scheidecker, SCHEIDECKER, the letter L, at IECC.edu. And they can reach out to me, email if they have questions or need advice, different things like that. And then on top of that, like our athletics webpage at Wabash Valley College Athletics, just have it on Google, will pop up. And we provide a lot of content. We should have another great year. We've got a ton of talent, and hopefully we made it to Final Four last year's. Had a great group, and hopefully continue to build on that success.
Awesome. Well, Coach Luke, I'm looking forward to following you all because that's very exciting. But thank you so much for being here.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening. If you aren't already, I would highly recommend subscribing to the podcast so you can get updated once new episodes are dropped. If you're a fan of the show, go ahead and leave a review. It really helps spread the word to more athletes, parents, and coaches. Now, if you have any questions for myself or future guests, feedback, or you're curious on how we can work together to help you reach your basketball goals, let's have a conversation. Feel free to email me at l@hoopsthroughlife.com today to set that up. That's EL@HOOPSTHROUGHLIFE.com. Thank you, and I look forward to hearing from you soon.